AMD family, Smart Shift is among us, and if you have some of the mobile platforms and the questions that I've been asking, this is the update for you. After the new 20 Adrenalin software popped onto the market, this should be available for you if you have the applicable technology. You're going to need your CPU, the integrated graphics, as well as the direct graphics, with the power supply being able to balance out some stuff. We're going to look at some fun charts. We're also going to look at the direct X11 and 12 improvements and or losses that I'm finished up for the testing for what's happened with the newer 19 now to the 2020 finally inside of this year software. But before we sink our teeth into some benchmark scores, let's sink our teeth into the news. Now, as you can kind of see that the 1912.2 is the new standard, and as we push forward in the release notes of what is going to be the fix list is decadent. One of the highlighted games that they got into was Monster Hunters in the world of the Iceborne. Now the fix list. As you can see, it starts with a beep and ends with a bloop. Because as your Radeon boost settings go crazy as the chill, the boost, and the anti-log have been removed for the simple reason of the auditorial beep that games started from those trigger points. The feature is now offered as an auditable point of the incline where you can activate via hotkey. So you can toggle them off and on, so it's a lot more easier and convenient. So your Alt R or any other portion of what you hit is your hotkey will be your best friend as you assign the future for yourself. Let's go ahead and continue on the list. If you're wondering where the default standard of the Radeon Relive and the screen timer indicator, it has now been switched to a disabled on the default rather than no. But if you go to your Radeon software settings, you should be able to enable that. Now, for as far as the control on the vertical sinks may be hidden or disappeared on the Radeon Enhanced for as far as it is enabled. Now, the Radeon Live may experience some freezing or pausing issues during the recording or the high resolution cameras connected to the use of that. One of the high idle CPU issues that they ran into was the Radeon Game Advisor has been invoked during a game certain times in that portion for the remaining of having to utilize that. So that's been fixed. Kind of cool. Seems like they actually spent some homework was knocking out the 19 and going to the 2020. Some users may experience an error message, and other instances is running during download of a software update through the Radeon software home screen. So you can always go to their friendly homepage, conveniently select drivers, and you can kind of see what ends up happening as you can kind of select that from there. But as we continue down the list and we see that the errors are growing past CPUs and the sometime experiences of the errors of an other instance is running during the download of that software, which has been kind of here and there, the duplication desktop process may sometimes cause a high CPU usage when and while playing games. Radeon software may choose to close or experience crashes upon the resuming for certain portions of the sleep. So I've noticed that myself. Radeon technology really doesn't like to go to sleep, to shut it off and turn it back on. It's a little unorthodox, but it definitely does fix some bugs sometimes. Looking on past that portion of the duplication, the software may close in the point of sleep. The toast message detailing the hotkey to open the Radeon software overlay may still show up in some games after the Radeon software overlay has disappeared, so that has been disabled. Lost Ark makes the top of the list for experiencing shudders and intermittent during gameplay, on top of the custom keys with the Radeon Live failing across the point. Stream button may remain inactive in the processing of choosing the regions to stream, even if the region has not been selected or chose. The Radeon R9 200, R9 300, and the R9 Fury series may be experiencing some instability with limited numbers in the DirectX 9 and 11 department as games when utilizing the high refresh rates for the 120 Hz plus on the displays. The workarounds, if you are experiencing this, is the issue is too low for your display rate. Simple, but kind of annoying. Totally understand. Some MPEG clips may experience a green tint on the RX 5700 series cards, as the graphics products when using the Windows Media Player for as far as what goes down to media playback. Mech Wars 5 makes the list for experiencing some shudders across the portion of where the game crash and the DXGI dialogue error when running the HDMI and the Radeon FreeSync in the display configuration. On top of that, when looking at the live stream for the DUU, as you in the application with the hardware acceleration enabled, may experience some video corruption on the RX 5700 series card. On top of that, for as far as the trailers rising, may experience a excessive fog slash smoke in areas of the game. Missing text or corrupt may be experienced inside of the right eye of the player for the VR on Boneworks. So you might have some blurry vision and it's just not you needing some bifocals. So don't rush out to go see the doctor quite yet, as they fix the issue on the overflow that may experience with the Radeon RX 5700 again, or as far as the series settings on the SETI at home. On top of the shop products and the buttons that may experience an AMD.com page instead of the proper web link, which they've come a long way with that Radeon integration. It's really nice now. And then for as far as the scrolling may fail for as far as the duration of the software install, that would suck. Just keep trying. You can definitely install it definitely again. Up and down and the arrow keys did not work when utilizing the search bar inside the Radeon software. Basically, they're making the browser a lot more utilizer friendly with the UI. And then the enablement of HDR, enabling displays in Windows, may experience some colors that have been washed out. So that's great. I've noticed that, especially playing playback and capturing, that it definitely does feel washed out a lot, like they just got the gamma blasted. But looking at past that situation, the Radeon software sidebar appears inside of the situation behind the actual physical windows, and the desktop when utilizing is the same setting on the side of your display. Playing the Tom Clancy Division 2 with HDR enabled, and the performance switches may occur during the display. The color corruption that persists even once the game is exited. It just basically artifacts the crap out of your GPU. So it's almost like doing a really bad overclock. You don't want it. As looking at the situation for the mixed reality portals may experience color corruption or distortion near the edge of viewing of the areas on the headsets. So that would definitely not be the best thing in situation for the mixed reality of portals. Now, Resident Evil 2 makes the list at the very end for the experience of the shutters and the screen flashing when launching the DirectX 12 API. The known issues that are out there, besides the fixed list that we just cleared, that are all the issues that we hope to have there. But if not, leave a comment down below. Your boy Mac would like to know. And if you're new to the community, you definitely should slam that subscription button since you're already leaving a comment, and slam that Liberty bell right next to it to get all your tech needs and answers through AMD software. I'm usually always on the cutting edge of trying to see what they're doing. But CES kind of pushed me back, as a lot of information has been trickling out through there. And we'll get to the NVIDIA, well, Navi Killer now. 17% on the boost, just to tease the percentage points of what they basically were talking about for the community of people. And I'm pretty sure if you've been on YouTube, you probably heard that there is a secret GPU out there right now. Looking at past that portion and some of the known issues, the software may experience the hotkey notification and sometimes in the display during the video playback and the web browsing launching. So it seems like a lot of the issues they just said they fixed, they just caused newer issues, maybe? Integrated scaling and the options not shown up in the availables for Windows 7. Probably should think about trying to get to Windows 10. You can always run back, but I do understand that 7 is actually a really good OS. It just sucks they stopped updating it for the most part. But looking at the factory resets in the install may keep previously configuring the Radeon software game profile. This can cause for the as far as portion of the mismatch between the global graphics and the per profile settings. The text flow and the overflow and the UI boxes or the toast messages may experience in some language locations. As far as looking inside the situation where you're looking at where the Radeon software may experience with the inconsistent size or may not be kept in its previous size set when opening. So we've got the text flow in the UI as far as the toast messages and the experience in the location. We've cleared that and gone to the Radeon software where it opens incorrect sizes, may experience the previous set sizes opened. On top of the Vulkan, gaming applications may crash when performing a task switch to the Radeon image sharpening when it's enabled. The integral scaling may cause some videos content to show flickers when utilizing the display resolutions is setting less than native resolution, so you don't want to do that because it's going to cause frame tear basically. And then going inside the situation of the RX 5700, always making the list nowadays, as the graphics users may intermittently experience a black screen. That's not cool when gaming on a desktop, especially if you're trying to get the last kill. As well as the potential portion of temporary workaround is disabling the hardware and the application running in the background, such as web browsers or Discord, which would suck, especially if you're streaming. That would be the point. I didn't utilize that card. So hopefully you're not streaming, and if you are, tell me your experience. I would definitely love to hear it. But we're done with the news. And we've covered what Radeon shift technology is for new laptops coming out utilizing that software boost. So, reading from right to left as I bring the charts a little bit closer, you'll see that the 19259, both running just the native default settings, nothing tampered with directly for as far as tweaking the OC, even though I want to. I know it'll perform really well. You see that the cross portion of the i7-67K holding down its CPU of the 4.4, but I do have it overclocked to the 4.5, as well as looking at the Radeon, and it goes from the clock frequency of 1764 for the 21.1 update versus the old school 1912.3. As you can see that is taking the full advantage of that. That's a huge increasement as looking at that. Now that's just Firestrike. When you look at Firestrike versus some 4K tests, it may be completely different because it pushes the processors. That's where the Radeon 7 falters. It's okay on 4K, but it ain't a champion like my GeForce RTX 2080 Ti. Both of them have cons and pros, but you can definitely see that there's a clock frequency over, but I just wanted to showcase this. So let's go ahead and get some more benchmarks. With further pulling up that, you can see where the graphics score comes in at 27803, and you're looking at the 12402 for the physics, and the combined score of the 7180. So that is the fresh 21.1. But when comparing that to the 1912.3, you can clearly see that the improvement is drastically the GPU. It's jumping up as we went from that 803 down from that 759. Physics and the combined score barely move. Now with the pixels turned all the way up, you can see that, well, it definitely was not what I was looking for too much directly, as you can kind of see where we're at right now with the scoring. Looking directly over to the right, which is the newer score, that's the 21.1, which scores just a few points down below. But let's go ahead and deeper analysis as we jump between pixels and a 4K overclocked of DirectX 11. As you can see right there, yes, the 132977 is great. And you can see the physics score, which comes into 1234.9. Some good stuff. The combined score, so-so. Not always the best in that situation. And by the way, it always says this every single time. It ends up popping on there for like the great situations of what unfolds. But looking on past that situation. So as you see, the scores completely go over the physics, and everything's going to shift a little bit. As you can see that we've gone up a little bit because the graphics drive went from the 1338, obviously down a little bit right there, and the physics score is driven a little bit up with that combinationable point, which will give us a little bit more of an overclock. I believe I said 4K in the beginning of this, but I believe this overclock is in the extreme is 1080p. Then we'll go to our ultra, which should be just 4K, and we'll get some improved results. When comparing the .12.3, you can definitely see the variation of what you can get in the standard play of, hey, what's going down? Not decent scores, but okay. But you can definitely see a pretty good improvement when you go from that of yesterday's to today's. You gain up a little bit, which is actually pretty big when you look at 4K, because what you're gaining inside of the actual physical graphics score as it clicks over is about 10 between that, but the physics definitely does not increase at all as the combined score. 4K is very hard for it to compute, but there is definitely some improvements there. Now this being now the DirectX 12, it shows a very interesting thing happen. When you definitely see the increasement of the graphics, you see a decreasement a little bit of the CPU, which was very interesting because this is what kind of seems like the shift technology, even though it's supposed to be for laptops and supposed to be just an AMD thing, but it's kind of there. You can see the decreasement and the actual increasement of the GPU. Now you don't notice the actual physical score change right there, but you notice that score drastically kind of changed, which is very interesting. It's not really affecting too much of my point per point, but it definitely offloaded what it was supposed to properly to the proper sources. So if I was overclocking that, that might give me a little bit more headroom to play with the power resources. Now this may be something maybe they'll patch on later on, where maybe it's something integratable where it's not supposed to be doing that, because as you can see right here where the 4K, and maybe this is just the way they tuned the DirectX 12 in the 4K, there's a kind of a decreasement, but there was a lot of fixes, as you can kind of see on certain games as we covered the patch. But you can see the before, which is the 1912.3, to now just looking at the more standard, and I've covered the standard. You can definitely watch my video. I can always put that in the very end description for the new standard, which is the 1912.12 or no, 1912.2, which you can watch. But looking at this now, we can sum up all the scores. We'll end our patch notes with this new Adrenalin software is edging forward in a lot of categories. DirectX 11 is improving. DirectX 12 is improving in certain standpoints. As we kind of compare the 4K to definitely the 1080p, we're seeing some interesting things as the CPU drops, and these might be future 20.1.2.3 variations that they push inside of the notes, because they did just roll out a new technology out there, but utilizing that, they utilize a different platform, if I remember correct, for when you install like NVIDIA, they do mobile and they do their own portion, but I believe the way the software is written, and I might be wrong, I might have to look into that for as far as the mobile application install. I think it might be one resource tech download where it comes into that, where it's just kind of broken off into the coding. But if not, I need to look into that because that would be fun to learn. But everyone, thank you so much for staying tuned. The fun benchmarks, the fun news as we look inside the very future of what we're getting in. And I know you wanted to know about this, the Navi killer. I saved this for the very end. As you can see, what I pulled up is the NVIDIA is killing it, because they're no longer going to have to just sit still. They're going to have to run at what Navi 23 is going to be expected, and their hardware for ray tracing is also on board. So if we're looking at a ray tracing increasement of 17% across the board, the 10% in certain applications as you probably go to 4K, that's an insane improvement. That's looking at 48, maybe 50 overclocked with a decent card without really messing or modding it out with like your 2080 Ti and trying to get some FPS without having to go to SLI if they're applicable, because the majority of 4K market is not even tapped into 60 FPS truly, because of what actually ends up coming down to being too more powerful for the situation. So it's not really there. You have to either use Crossfire, which Crossfire really isn't a thing, because I think a lot of what the developers have gotten into is like, oh yeah, we've got the technology where 7 nm can run the future at a little bit faster pace, more compound pace, and a lot more on there in order to combat Moore's law as we push forward inside of the situation. So if you are new to the network, you can always subscribe for situations that will be fun in the near future. As you can kind of see, and I definitely wanted to showcase this article as I found it, and it was very charming. You can definitely read the description down below for my PC and the Navi 23 and their expected charts, as you can kind of see theirs, and my technological layouts. So I would love to see you again in the near future. Thank you for spending your time here, and if you're a returning community member, cheers. Thank you for supporting me and my dreams as we coast along knowledge. Sorry I was a little bit late on this, Techies and TechX, but I was definitely compounding a lot of information. Yes, which was really fun. The situation to take in what basically it was, which was laptop wars. That's all shift technology was to combat Comet Lake. So, new to the network, subscribe. You guys and gals in the near future, and if you subscribe today, who knows? Maybe I could become a written character in a Resident Evil game. That'd be kind of cool. Get famous enough for Capcom's just like, hey, we need you in some Resident Evil 10. I'd like to think it might happen. Anyways, all subscription humor aside, thank you. I'll see you guys and gals in the near future.